Hello and welcome back to another video. In this video, no big intro on this one, I am answering all your questions about narcissism in the workplace. So following on from the previous 3 videos I've done on this topic, I'm now going to be answering your questions. I've had so many in that I'm actually going to do 2 different videos on this one, just so that I can get through everything. I'm Jo Banks. I've been a professional executive coach for the last nearly 15 years, and I'm sharing what I know. Question 1. Is there such a thing as a partial narcissist, or are these behaviours possible for all of us, but those who display the behaviours all the time are narcissists? Really want to be clear here, we're not diagnosing anyone. It's very difficult to diagnose a narcissist, basically because they won't go to anyone to get a diagnosis, and typically because they don't think there's anything wrong with them. So let's kind of split this out. We all have narcissistic traits, all of us. Every single one of us. Does not mean that we're a narcissist though. However, going back to what I discussed in the cycle of abuse in part 2, it's really important that you go back and look at that. So if somebody goes through that narcissistic abuse cycle, so love bombing, devaluation, discard and hoover, good chance that they are a narcissist. And again, we're not diagnosing anyone here, but it's a really good indicator. So we can all have the traits, doesn't necessarily mean we're a narcissist. Number 2, are narcissistic behaviours conscious? I get this all of the time. It's a really common one. They don't necessarily know that they're a narcissist at all, but they're very well aware that they are manipulating people, and what they're doing is not necessarily right. A lot of narcissists know that, but narcissists are conscious. They are very manipulative, and they know they're very manipulative. They know what they need to do to get what they want. Number 3, through your research, do you find an equal split between female and male? No, there isn't an equal split. And I think the research, although it's a while since I've looked at the research and probably I should have done before I recorded this, I think it's probably the 80-20. It might even be in terms of men being the 80, women being the 20%, might even be less than that from women. But absolutely, women can also be narcissists. I have one in my life, and I've had one in my life since I was a child. So I'm very well aware that women can be narcissists as well, but it tends to be more from the male perspective. Number 4. There are those who never apologise and they never take responsibility. Is that a trait? Yes, absolutely. It's one of the biggest traits of a narcissist, is that they will not accept responsibility. That's probably one of the biggest things, and that's where the gaslighting comes in, and the other kind of behaviours come in, where they deflect anything away from themselves that they don't want. So absolutely, it is massive. They're never going to apologise. They are always going to deflect. They're always going to gaslight. They're always going to find ways not to take responsibility. It's probably the biggest trait. Number 5, do narcissists realise what they are? As I just said in a previous question, typically not. They don't typically know that they're a narcissist. They know that they're a bit different. And they know that they've got this skill of being able to manipulate people. And a lot of narcissists, believe it or not, can feel quite bad afterwards about their behaviour, but it won't mean that they'll stop. So do they know that they're a narcissist? No. Do they know that they're good at manipulating people and getting what they want? Yes, absolutely. Number 6, are there links between narcissism and codependency? For example, are people who have a tendency to codependency in other relationships targets for narcissists? 100%. Absolutely. Codependency and narcissism go hand in hand. There's a really interesting saying that I once heard, that narcissists' victims are primed in a way that other narcissists can spot. So that codependency, that people pleasing, that need to be liked is manna from heaven for a narcissist, and they will spot that really quickly. So during the data mining phase, during the love bombing phase, they are picking up on all of that. So if you don't have strong boundaries, when they start the devaluation, if you remember in video 2, I talked about the devaluation starting with maybe 1 or 2 negative things that they do. They're testing the water during that phase, and they're seeing how much they can get away with. If you don't pick them up on that, if you don't hold strong boundaries, that's when they know, hello, we've got somebody. Great. Now we can go to work. And typically those people who don't set the boundaries, who don't answer back, who don't say, no, that's not okay, have some codependency, or they have that people pleasing in their background. And people pleasing often starts with parent pleasing. Again, look back on video 1. I discussed that in more detail in video 1. Number 7. Is phase 1 always present in the cycle of narcissistic abuse? And that's what I discussed in video 2. Typically, yes. And I remember I got asked that question when I was delivering the training to all of those HR people a year ago. And I think I said emphatically, yes, it's always going to be there. But in retrospect, I look back and there have been times, either with clients or myself, where phase 1 love bombing hasn't necessarily been there. You've just come across a person right from the beginning and they're just mean, cruel, nasty, self-centered. So love bombing is a tool that a lot of narcissists use because they're getting you off guard. They are data mining. They're getting to know you. They're getting to know what they can use against you. So typically it's there, but it doesn't necessarily always have to be there. Some people just don't care about being nasty, mean, and cruel. They don't necessarily need to do the data mining bit because they just don't care. So I'm going to go back on what I said initially on that a year ago and say, no, it doesn't necessarily have to be there. However, typically it is. Number 8, can someone be grandiose and malignant at the same time? Absolutely. Don't get hung up on the titles. And I discussed the kind of different types of narcissism in video 1. Don't get hung up on that. It really doesn't matter. Some people are covert, which means they act all victimhood, whereas others are full of themselves and think they're amazing. Malignant can be really insidious. Well, pretty much they're all insidious in different ways. So don't get hung up on the titles. Just look at the behaviours, especially the narcissistic abuse cycle that I discussed in video 2. Number 9. Do narcissists know they're intentionally being manipulative for their own gain and to the detriment of others? Yes. Short and simple answer to that. Yes, they absolutely do know that they're being intentionally manipulative for their own gain. Very much so. And I've even known narcissists who brag about that, I just know what to do. I know how to say, I know how to get what I want. So yes, all narcissists know what the heck they're doing. Yeah. Number 10, how do you work with a narcissist? What's the best way to deal with this behavior? I discussed that in detail in video 3. So the best way to deal with a narcissist, if you can't go no contact, because that's the number 1 tool that we use to deal with narcissism. And that's absolutely blocking them, not returning emails, blocking them from your phone, blocking their emails, blocking them on social media. That's the very best way. However, in work, you can't necessarily do that. So then we go what we call grey rock. So with grey rock, you do exactly what it says on the tin. You don't react. You don't give them anything over and above. You stay factual. You record everything. And that's really, really important that you record any interactions and what happens. Because if at some later date you want to take some formal action against that person, your HR department or your manager are going to need facts, figures, numbers, dates, times, evidence, as much evidence as possible. So if you can't go no contact, go grey rock. More on that in episode 3. Number 11, how do you line manage a narcissist? Same way, you do grey rock and you be very, very factual. I have been dealing with the worst case of narcissistic bullying I have ever seen in my entire career, and that's 20 years in HR and 15 years doing what I'm doing now. I have recently been dealing with the worst case I have ever seen. And that is from a manager managing somebody who is narcissistic. And again, it was all about facts, figures, dates, recording everything, and disciplining that person appropriately. Really, really important. Unfortunately, what tends to happen in organizations is when you've got a difficult employee, instead of dealing with them, the company will shift them around and put them in other departments, just moving the problem around. I see it so frequently. However, really important to nip in the bud and to deal with these things head on, face on. Difficult, but not impossible. And also get some really great legal advice when you're going through this as well. Most solicitors, especially in the UK, will have had, if you get a good one, they'll have had experience of dealing with this and will be able to guide you through it. Number 12. What happens in a situation where someone who displays narcissistic behavior towards the wrong person, someone who can spot the signs and push back on them? How does the narcissist react? Well, first of all, they're not going to like it. And they'll probably be quite antagonistic towards that person. But on the whole, they're going to leave them alone. Because a narcissist is after narcissistic supply. They are after dismantling other people to build themselves up. That's what we've said all the way through this program. Narcissists put others down to build themselves up. So if they can't do that with somebody, if somebody has strong boundaries and doesn't react, and they put all of those things in place that I've discussed in part 3, then the narcissist is not going to like it, but they're going to leave that person alone. They're very clever about how they choose their victims. And that's why putting strong boundaries is, as soon as you see that devaluation phase start, is absolutely critical. So no, they don't like it, but they will deal with it. They will have a massive dislike for that person, though, even hatred, which can sometimes be difficult as well, because they might go around looking at other ways to sabotage that person. I've seen that happen. You might see what we call narcissistic rage when that happens, where the narcissist can't necessarily take it out on that person, but they'll take it out on the people around them. So another one to look out for, narcissistic rage. Number 13. If an employee comes to you saying that their boss is a narcissist because they read about it once, what's the best approach to this? As it could be deflection. It could be deflection. Best way to deal with it is to look at the facts, get that person to go away and make detailed notes, get the evidence, everything that I discuss around what organizations should do in part 3 of the series. So get them, they must produce evidence, and you really want to be seeing that narcissistic cycle of abuse. Unfortunately, narcissism is a throwaway term now. We use it all of the time, but we shouldn't be just throwing that term in unnecessarily. So you want evidence. You need them to record and produce evidence on their bullying. It's also important to understand that not all bullies are narcissists, but all narcissists are bullies. So people can be a bully without being a narcissist. And if you really want to understand if they're a narcissist or not, look at the narcissistic cycle of abuse that I discuss in detail in part 2. The wrap up. It's important to note that we can all have elements of narcissistic traits in certain situations. Doesn't make us narcissistic. However, where you see a number of these traits repeated regularly in a person, you should be wary. All genders can be narcissistic, although research does suggest that it's more prevalent in those whose birth gender was male. As I've said numerous times throughout this video, if you think you're being bullied, if you in any form, because if we look at narcissists, all narcissists are bullies, but not all bullies are narcissists. So it goes for whether the person is a narcissist or not. Please take and keep evidence. Go complete no contact if that's possible. That's the only true way of not having to deal with a narcissist. If you can't do that, go grey rock. That's the second best thing. I explain that in a lot more detail in video 3. What next? For a free copy of my Narcissism in the Workplace fact sheet, click the link in the description. And if you haven't started watching my Narcissism in the Workplace mini-series, click the link at the end of the video, or I'll leave it in the description below. In the series, you'll learn what drives a narcissist, types of narcissists, who their victims are, the narcissistic cycle of abuse, the Duluth power and control model, which covers coercive control, can a narcissist change, and how to deal with narcissistic bullying. If you enjoyed this video, please remember to like, subscribe, comment, and hit that notification bell so that you don't miss any new upcoming episodes. As always, thank you for watching. Thank you to everybody who watches until the very end, and thank you so much for your continued support.